to another episode of TFB TV, guys. Today we're looking at the Springfield Armory M1a 7.62 gas-operated, magazine-fed rifle. The Springfield Armory M1a rifle is a variant of the M14 that was developed for civilian usage. And bear in mind, the Springfield Armory that we're talking about here has nothing to do with the government Springfield Armory. This is a private entity. But to go back in time a bit, the M14 rifle is sort of a design progression of the M1 Garand of World War II lore. The M14 only served for a couple of years in the 1950s and into Vietnam, where it was then replaced by the M16 and then the M16A1. The M14 has a lot of detractors, namely because it's very uncontrollable on full auto, it's a woodstock rifle, whereas our allies had the FAL, it's long, it's heavy. However, if you're a fan of the M1 Garand, I kind of look at the M14 as a progression of one of the most influential semi-automatic battle rifles ever to see service in the 20th century, and I see that with the M14. Plus, seeing what guys carried in Vietnam, there's a very strong bond to people who want to have what, our guys had in Vietnam and carried in the rice paddies of South Vietnam during the war. So some of the differences between the M14 and the M1 Garand, the biggest difference is the caliber. Is the M14 is in 7.62, the M1 Garand is 30-06. The magazine-fed portion of the M14 was something that was in development with the M1 in World War II for a long while and eventually led to the M14. There were a number of 30-06 magazine-fed variants of the Garand that were experimented with and tested in World War II and afterwards. However, none of these were adopted or put into use until the field trials with the M14 came into play. The M14 has a trapdoor buttstock. In addition, it has a folding butt plate. This is supposedly for use in fully automatic fire to keep the rifle on target. Although the M14 is magazine fed, it also takes 5-round clips, which when the magazine is inserted, you can insert the clips via a loading tray on top. The M14 has a synthetic cover to cover up the barrel. This was to aid with heat expansion. In addition, it has a bolt hold open device on the left side of the rifle. This actually locks the bolt open on the last round, and you can send the bolt forward as well when pressing down. The gas system is a slightly different design than the M1 Garand. Gone is the actuator rod that pushes the magazine follower up and feeds the rounds into the chamber, and replaced with a simpler piston system that traps gas from the front of the rifle and brings gas to the rear. The compensator has been added. This is again to help with full auto, and the front sight has been changed a little bit as well. Springfield Armory started making the M1a, the civilian variant, in probably the 1970s, 1980s time frame, and was soon followed by Fulton Armory, Norinco, and a couple other manufacturers that didn't really make it into today. However, the M1a in the civilian setting is very coveted after for the historical reasons that I mentioned earlier. It's used for competition as well. The M14 service didn't just end in Vietnam when it was replaced by the M16A1. Today, the M14 actually sees service and use by the Marine Corps, the Navy, and the Army as an EBR or DMR rifle, coupled with a Sage Dynamics stock. In addition to a number of other reinforced stocks, the M14 has seen service in Iraq and Afghanistan by various squad-level designated marksmen. The reason for this was because the military needed a 7.62 DMR rifle at the front, and they didn't want to shell out for something new otherwise, so the military simply took standard M14s that were in storage and sent them downrange. In addition, the Navy still uses the M14 as a line throwing gun, using it to toss lines between Navy ships. It has a number of options that you can change on the rifle. There are a number of aftermarket accessories. They make 25-round magazines, national match barrels, and components to be used in the matches at Camp Perry. There is a 25-round magazine that is an aftermarket piece. It adds a significant amount of length to a stock magazine if you have one, and they never really were fielded downrange at all. Something I added to my M1a was an actual surplus M14 stock that I bought at a CMP location in Alabama. The stock has the cutout for the selector switch, but obviously my rifle isn't fully automatic, so it doesn't have the selector switch at all. However, what I like about the stock is that if you want to get an M1a, any variant, for a cheap price, I would highly advise getting a polymer stock and discarding it and then getting a cheap aftermarket stock. This brings the rifle more in line with what it would have actually looked like in the historical time frame in when it was used, something I'm always after with my rifles, trying to reproduce them as such. And thank you very much for watching, guys. I really support the viewership on the channel. I would really like to also thank ProxyBid. They are a firearms auction site, which you can go on and check out. They might even have an M1a for cheap on there. Give it a try. But they really help out our channel, and they really help bring content like this to you guys, our viewers, every week.